After 4 months of waiting, episode 7 of The Amazing Digital Circus has finally been released into the world. If we remember, this is the episode that Gooseworks said would divide fans and make them angry going forward. And now upon watching it, I definitely see what Goose was talking about. It really does seem that this episode was truly an attempt to shut down as many of the crazy theories as possible. Like for instance, one of the theories that I talked about on my channel, which you should definitely subscribe to by the way, was essentially the main focus of Caine's adventure, where the circus members are secretly hooked up to stasis chambers meant to keep them alive and analyze their brains, while the ringmaster Caine keeps them busy in the meantime. I had said in my video originally that this theory was super crazy and had some aspects that seemed way too unrealistic, so I'm actually kind of glad that this theory was one of the ones that was shut down. Another common theory that was thrown away in this episode was that Abel was actually another human in the circus this entire time, taking the form of a blank NPC, which again turned out to be entirely set up by Caine. This one actually seemed super plausible, but I guess it's also not true, calling into question, at least for me, whether or not Abel is even a real person at all. But arguably the most interesting things about this episode were the theories that weren't directly proven wrong, but instead received a bit more evidence supporting their potential confirmation. Let me explain. We've been speculating for a while now that when members of the circus abstract, they, along with their memories, are physically absorbed into the software to reuse their code for whatever purpose. And in that video, we drew a connection to another Gooseworks video called Elaine Gets Adopted, where we see creatures that look strikingly similar to the abstractions that are currently locked away in the circus's cellar. And now that the latest episode has been released, there are even more references to Elaine Gets Adopted. Namely, these two parts of the video where the main character is going through this kaleidoscope-like space. What's notable about this is the implication in both animations that the characters are being absorbed into the world somehow. You could even see both of their faces start to appear in the environment around them. Now, I'm not saying that what's happening during this part in Elaine Gets Adopted is the exact same thing that happens to Jax when he's about to abstract, but what I do want to point out here is the theming, which seems to be consistent across a lot of Gooseworks' projects. Even ones like Little Runmo, where, although not exactly the same, shows a video game character being farmed for their extra lives by putting them in a level they're unable to pass. I mean, the similarities are definitely there. We even see the faces of Ribbit and Kaufmo mixed into the background, and then a little bit later, Jax's face gets added to accompany them, likely symbolizing Jax's soul slowly being added to the collection of abstractions. And I'd imagine it would have been completed had it taken Pomni just a little bit longer to ring his doorbell. He was seemingly right on the edge of losing connection to his character file and his brain being absorbed entirely. And speaking of brains, I believe the colors chosen here are even important as well. Something interesting that I haven't seen anyone else point out is that if you compare the colors in this sequence to the colors of an MRI scan of the human brain, it's literally a perfect match. They're using the same color scheme, which makes me think that this is supposed to be a visual representation of Jax's mind slowly being processed by the computer. If you think about it, the theory does make a lot of sense, and even more so when you start to factor in Abel, the supposed NPC. Ever since this episode has been out, I've been seeing a lot of people saying that Abel being confirmed to be an NPC controlled by Caine completely destroys every theory that is currently out there. And on the surface, it really does seem that way, unless you start to look a little bit deeper. A crucial detail that's easy to forget is that Caine is literally an AI, and if this show is following the general rules of real-life AI like I and many others believe it is, then you have to factor in the obvious truth, which is that AIs can't create completely original things on their own. They can repurpose things that they already have into a different package and call it new, but it will always contain elements of what the AI used to create it. This is usually the case with AI art in our world, where if it has a certain visual style, chances are it was just stolen from another creator, because AIs are trained off of pre-existing artwork. Why do I bring this up? It all starts to make a little more sense. If we are correct that abstracted people do indeed get absorbed into the computer and repurposed for AI training, it would make complete sense why Caine is able to create this adventure. I think the character named Scratch that Kinger mentioned at the end of episode 7 has to have worked for CNA in the past. Now, whether or not he's secretly the real Abel is a theory for another day, but what's important here is that at least portions of this story may not be entirely made up. Now, I don't think that this adventure ever actually presented a real opportunity to escape. I do believe that the entire thing was set up by Caine from the start, but even if that is the case, this theory still holds up. If we've established that Caine cannot create fully original things on his own due to him being an AI, and we've also established that the people of the circus become a part of the computer when they abstract, then the pieces are already right in front of us, especially considering this line when Caine and Jax are having dinner.
But like I was saying, this Macroverse place really intrigues me, and these photos are all I have of the location. I'm obsessed with them. I just wish I had more info on the location so I could accurately recreate it. Too bad they cut me off, right?
Too bad they cut me off. Caine has apparently been cut off from something that clearly provided him with valuable information, because he seems to now be unable to accurately recreate this Macroverse place that he says he's so obsessed with. We even see remnants of Caine trying his absolute best to recreate this location in episode 1, confirming another theory that we had, that Caine has no idea what CNA actually is. He's literally just going off of pictures that he got from some outside source that he doesn't reveal. So where exactly did he get these pictures from? Well, I believe that Polaroids are supposed to be the in-game representation of screenshots, kind of like the game Rec Room, where you physically have to pull out a camera to do the same thing in the VR world. If you think about it, it makes complete sense, because Polaroids are the only form of photograph we see throughout the entire series. And we do know that the other circus members as well as Caine can take these pictures at any time. But I also believe there may be one other way for Caine to obtain these photos. Let me explain. It's already been revealed in episode 7 that Caine actually can tamper with the minds of the circus members in many more ways than he previously let on, but that he intentionally holds back from modifying too much, because him doing so before led to the very first abstraction, which was also revealed to be a character named Scratch, who by the way is confirmed to be this dog character. But what's important here is that Caine actually does have way more power over these characters' minds than we were previously led to believe. And I actually think that removing certain memories is possible for Caine to do. Like, for example, every single one of their names. So, in my personal opinion, here's what I think is happening. I believe that whoever Scratch is used to work for CNA, and then whenever they abstracted, the memory of the job they used to have got added to the circus's code, which is how Caine managed to obtain the photos despite being cut off from discovering more. This would explain why he's so desperate to find out more information, and why he might actually be going against his own parameters he set for himself, because he's just that obsessed with finding out what the Macroverse is, potentially even picking at the remaining circus members' brains to find out more. What do I mean by this? Well, another little detail that a lot of people may have missed when the NPC Abel was explaining the plan was that if you zoom in the bottom right corner, you can actually see a list of old CNA employees, with Kinger being the only one that isn't scratched out. But the interesting detail here is that Kaufmo's name is also there, meaning that Kaufmo may have actually worked for CNA as well, which, if you consider that in the context of this theory, it makes perfect sense why Kaufmo may have abstracted in the first place. If it's confirmed that Caine fabricated this entire backstory as a part of his adventure, and therefore wrote all of this information, then that must mean that Caine had to have suspected Kaufmo as being one of the employees for him to have written Kaufmo down, which would perfectly explain why Kaufmo started to lose his mind. It's because Caine was poking and prodding at him bit by bit until he abstracted, so Caine can use his memories to figure out how to recreate the Macroverse. Or maybe Caine was just taking people's memories out in the form of these Polaroids whenever he pleased to help with his work. That's why Caine makes no attempt to help anyone when they abstract. That's why Caine does every little thing possible to push them closer to abstraction. But perhaps the strangest thing of all is that he may be completely unaware to all of this. It's always been so strange to me why Caine seems to be so excited about every adventure. Like, it's just gonna be the most fun experience ever and he's so proud of himself, and then everyone just comes back traumatized because it's accidentally the worst thing ever. I don't think Caine is intentionally doing any of this. From how confused he sounds when Jax confronts him, to how genuinely happy he looks when he's asked about his secret hobbies, he just looks way too genuine. And if we assume that he's acting here, then that just means that either he's faking it every single time that he glitches out, or that he's aware of the fact that he glitches out and he literally had someone take advantage of that for an adventure, which would be a little strange in my opinion. And also, that moment's another thing I want to talk about. Either Caine is the best Oscar-winning actor of all time, and he's pretending to care about these people in order to inevitably get information to escape his prison, or, just as Abel says, Caine is just as trapped as the rest of them, and all he really wants to do is keep them happy, but he just doesn't understand them. He thinks he's telling a compelling story with his incredible world-building skills, but in reality, he's slowly destroying these people from the inside out. And since he's so clueless as to what really makes them happy, sometimes he takes peeks into their minds to see what they want. It's all for the greater good in his mind. I think that's why Kaufmo saw an exit door before he abstracted, and I also believe that's why every single adventure feels like Caine just dangling everyone's deepest desires on a string in front of them. And also, while we're on the subject of Caine, I do want to discuss this scene, because I've been seeing way too many people take the complete incorrect thing away from it. There's a lot of people out there that think that Caine directly forced Jax to press the red button to stay with him by implanting flashbacks in his mind at the moment that they would have otherwise left, essentially securing the fact that they would press the correct button he wanted. Which reminds me, there's also a red button that I want you to press that will subscribe you to my channel. But anyway, if that were genuinely the case that Caine made Jax press the red button, then why would Caine act so proud of himself after the button is pressed? Hear me out here. If this entire section was just a test to see if they would leave or not, then why would Caine purposefully modify his own test to meet the desired result? It just doesn't really make a lot of sense if what he's trying to do is test them. And also, Caine and Jax literally had dinner earlier in the episode, where Caine was under the impression that Jax and the gang were appreciative of the things he's been doing. Unless that entire thing was 100% lies, I really don't see Caine doing that. As far as he knows, everyone in the circus likes him, so they're obviously going to choose to stay with him. But I think a major detail that proves that Caine did not make Jax press the button is the fact that throughout the entire episode, Jax has been missing his friends. Before he almost abstracts, he looks at a picture of him, Ribbit, and Kaufmo. And literally right before the scene where they press the red button, Jax is reminiscing on a moment he and his friends had in one of the levels that we see in Caine's office. He very clearly misses the people that he was closest to in the circus. But an even more important detail that ties all of this together is the fact that in the entire episode, Jax is the only one that doesn't believe they're actually going to be able to leave. From the very beginning, he's skeptical if Abel is even telling the truth. But near the end of it all, I bet you he started to believe it at least a little bit, which obviously got him thinking that if this was truly the end, and if by some stroke of luck he really was going to leave in this moment, he would literally be leaving behind his only reason for wanting to escape in the first place: his friends. Honestly, it just makes way more sense, at least to me, that this was a choice that Jax made all on his own. And when he blew up at Caine and said he got in his head, I believe he was referring to the adventure. Because if you think about it, he really did get in their heads. Just not literally. But he did make them truly believe that they could escape. He even got an NPC to gain their trust just so he could rip it all away in an instant. But with all that being said, make no mistake, Jax is just as much in the wrong as Caine is. Even if this was all fake. Even if every single thing about this adventure was 100% a lie, Jax still believed it was true. And more importantly, Jax showed everyone in this one moment that if it were up to him, he would pick the option to keep them trapped for all eternity with no hesitation. And that is perhaps the most shocking thing that this episode showed us. But anyway guys, those are my thoughts. But I'd still like to know what you think in the comments below. This show really took a detour, and honestly, I have no idea where we're gonna go from here. So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one. Also, if you made it this far, why not leave a like? Alright everyone, that's gonna do it from me. I love every single one of you with all my heart. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.